next speakers are Jason Warrelmann and Nader Mherabi. Nader Mherabi is Executive Vice President and Vice Dean, Chief Digital and Information Officer at NYU Langone Health. He is responsible for all information technology activities for NYU Langone Health and for information technology's development as a strategic organizational asset. He previously was Vice President for IT Product Solutions and Chief Technology Officer for NYU Langone, responsible for technology strategy, infrastructure engineering, networks, data centers, application architecture, systems deployment, and support across the institution. Jason Warrelmann has been transforming healthcare operations for over 15 years with some of the largest healthcare provider, payer, and pharmacy organizations. He is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt, change manager, and agile coach, which gives him a unique view into what works in a healthcare environment. Jason currently leads the healthcare and life sciences practice at UiPath, which focuses on developing capabilities, integrations, and reusable components that make UiPath a healthcare automation platform and not just a tool that works in healthcare.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jason Warrelmann. I lead the global healthcare and life science practice here at UiPath. UiPath being a world leader in robotic process automation and digital transformation. And today, we want to talk a little bit about AI and automation married together. And I also have Mr. Nader here representing NYU Langone, and he is a subject matter expert in this field. And today we're going to talk a little bit about this topic, and I really appreciate your time, Mr. Nader, and joining me today in this presentation.
Thank you for Andrew and for intro, and thank you, Jason. I'm Nader Mherabi, Chief Digital and Information Officer for NYU Langone Health, and I'm looking forward to a good, lively conversation.
Awesome. We always figure you can hear us at UiPath talk about the future, but when we bring thought leaders together, we make music, right? So let's talk about the market. It's interesting is I just read that, in Forrester, no doubt that 56% of technology leaders are looking to or have adopted AI and automation together to deliver higher levels of opportunity. A lot of the baseline automations that 2 years ago that were kind of edge case are now very common, almost a commodity. But processes tend to be as unique as people are, which is our primary, buyer. So we start to see higher levels of automation when we bring in artificial intelligence. I'm wondering, Mr. Nader, are you seeing the same thing? Do you agree with that statistic? What's your point of view specifically from your operations?
So I say, in the field of clearly RPA and AI, the healthcare is rapidly catching up. Because just like us, when we look at the value realization of a technology, it's important to examine what some of these technology offer, and we think that both of these RP and AI, and especially combined together, will bring a lot of value to organization, assuming that it's deployed and directed the right way. But for us, when we look at these technologies a few years back, we really did a good deep analysis of the capability in the market, and we knew that some of these were in infancy in healthcare, and we've invested, and then we've set up a whole program both for RPA and AI, both applied and as it related to AI and research, and then we've been at it for some time now.
Yeah, and knowing about a lot of your journey, I think you're seeing the same things we're seeing a lot of, and that's where those buckets of opportunity. Automation is enterprise-wide, but AI itself hasn't necessarily made enterprise-wide, right? So we're seeing areas like revenue cycle management for things like propensity to pay, high-end court functions, which typically get forgotten about, especially, hospitals have to, when they do all these mergers and acquisitions, you have to balance all these trial balance. It's not as easy as a spreadsheet. There's a lot of AI that could be put into that to do that real time and all the puts and takes and credits and debits. One of the new emerging areas that we're seeing a lot of course, is clinical ops, is where a lot of that falls into. But I'm not talking the discharge or someone from a qualifying COVID perspective. I'm talking more if this, then that. Can I determine a workflow item and then determine what type of automation to take over so the clinician doesn't have to do all that work? You let the robot do it, which is 40 to 50% of the administration that a physician touches every day. When we talk about clinical burnout, or what a lot of clinicians call pajama time at night. And of course, new emerging areas around radiology. So we're seeing a lot of these clinical and non-clinical areas where that AI and RPA fit into place. And I think you're seeing a lot of the same. Are you seeing a lot of the same, or do you see additional value points?
Well, clearly, as you indicated, around corporate services, finance, and account payable, receivable, billing, HR, AI, RPA is really academic, in my opinion, that it would create efficiency. They've been deployed and across industry, people use it to that capacity, finance, insurance, and of course for us doing it. But really, we see the value further than that, really coming within, especially around clinical operations, potentially reducing, the physician workload by looking at their, to-do list, what we call in basket.
Right.
How do we minimize that? And then really what we see the power of it, and we're just considering a bunch of pilots about really how do you marry two together to really create a very meaningful and a scalable solution that would bring a lot of value, whether that's reducing people's time to focus on more valuable things, or really rethinking how people do the work. I think that's a great area of opportunity in healthcare, and so that's the area that for us focus, along with just doing the corporate basic RPA work that I think it simplifies and brings value.
Yeah, I think you hit a nail there, and something I forgot to mention is it's not just about recommendation-based AI, it's also insights-based AI, right? The whole front ending. So when you talk about document understanding, not OCR, ICR, but actually looking at the sentiment of the document and categorizing and abstracting it, that's 60% of the workflow and determination. Even concepts like process mining and task mining, which at essence just looks like another tool, but the AI algorithm on the back end is taking a lot of data sets that really aren't related and then making them related through a categorization model or an entity model and saying, this is how it looks like in your process, and here's an opportunity. So it's not recommending, but it's giving you more reconnaissance to make an informed decision. So we see a lot of that opportunity right now in healthcare as well, across that enterprise. What's interesting though, when I see those sort of use cases, those use cases become a little bit easier to implement because it comes in a tooling, right? It's very finite. You define an end-to-end metric and everything that falls into place, and you feed it the data, and it's off to the races, and it gives you a great insight. But it's that recommendation-based automation that gets tricky because you have to do that insights engine, right? You have to do the data source that feeds it from a transformation. And then you actually have to build tooling around it, which requires productization. It requires change management. A lot of that is driven with automation, but it still requires you to put it into operation, right? So, I mean, from your perspective, do you see challenges in deploying those AI models inside of the healthcare system? And do you see automation especially like things like our AI center, which is more of a deployment tool, being a benefit to that type of program. Because at the end of the day, data scientists are data scientists. They're not DevOps, right?
Yeah, so it's a very loaded question. Let me see if I can break it down to a couple of parts for the audience. So I think that's why it is very important to set up to think about this in a very broad way and set up the program, the infrastructure to support not one or two of these models running around, but think about hundreds of these models running around and the processes, automation running around and doing things. And how do you scale that in a way that it really would work and give you the value? It's no good that if you have 4 of these running around and you got a lot of people supporting it, and it doesn't work one day and things drop. So that you have to set up a good, meaningful program. For example, when we set up the RPA program, we set up an operational team. We looked at the tools that can actually support and give you the right level of intervention if something goes wrong across multiple RPAs running, not 2 or 5. So that's what because we would like to scale it, to continue to scale this, and many RPAs running as we move forward. And the same thing for AI. We've really thought about AI long and hard by setting up the program, and part of it's about really making sure that simplifying as best we can the amount of time spent for data science to cleanse the data, to check the quality of the data, to bring the data together, and so that this way it becomes easier. So as such, we've created data lakes to really bring the data together so people don't reinvent the wheel every time and reduce that burden. And then so people can focus on building the models. And then along the same vein, we set up the whole DevOps of the model. So how do you operate a model, and whether that's on the cloud or on-prem, integrate with electronic health record, or integrate with our ERP system. And that is a separate team to make that some of these models run 24/7, 365. And so you've got to set up the whole infrastructure, program, people to care feed for these things, and then vendor partnership, of course, it's important to make sure you pick the right platforms to do that. So that's really important for people to consider that when you're doing, especially when they become together, RP and AI together. You wanted to make sure you have a visibility to end-to-end how these things work and be able to support day in, day out. So that's an important aspect of how to have a successful program related to this.
And I share the view wholeheartedly. We've had prior conversations around how a lot of organizations look at AI and RPA in 2 different buckets, and they might have 2 completely different center of excellences, right? Center of excellence is everywhere. But when you bring them together, like you have, it just makes the program accelerate, more holistic, and obviously the adoption of what you build is more accepted. Just because you don't, that old term, too many cooks in the kitchen, right? It's one kitchen in this scenario that you can cook with. So for the audience here, not a lot of organizations think this way, or they have an innovation team, but they treat both separately, pulling from 2 different places and trying to pull them together. You figured out how to put them together and deliver as one, which is pretty fantastic. So we are seeing these organizations do that. Like we said, that 56% number above, and I think it's growing. One of the things that interests me, it's just 56%, right? 56% in healthcare is a big number. When was the last time you saw 56% of anything other than maybe telehealth last year, right? Why do you think the other, 44% isn't thinking this way? Is it because they don't believe in it, or is it because the size of the hospital?
Well, I think I'm sure there are many reasons. Some of that I can think of is related to resources. Some of the institutions may not have the ample resources. The cost of setting up a startup, starting it up, a program like that can be, it's not a chump change, and it could be a chump. It's not minuscule. Let's put it this way. And then the organizations focus. Some organizations focus on different things, so they may not be a priority for them because they have other things to do. Some organizations may live in mergers, or some are focusing on getting their electronic health records optimized before they get to this level. So they could be in their evolution of different steps of their digital evolution. So that's something that I think could be maybe a reason for adoptions. So it's this different spectrum that I think. But I think as these technology proven their ROIs, I think there will be more and more mainstream. Also, that the tools and technology become much more. You don't have to, reinvent the wheel and build everything from scratch. Models would be available. RPA processes that you can quickly adopt and put in your environment become readily. So it's really that there will be marketplace for these things. So you don't have to really build these things and do the hard work, and you actually kind of purchase them and integrate them and use them a lot faster. So I see, down the road, that's where it's going to go, and then it will make that adoption wheel a lot go faster. Because right now it's still,
Great.
Doing custom, which is, costly and time to market is also longer.
And I think that's one thing when we talk to CIO, CTO, really anybody at the executive level, they miss that word platform, right? I talk to obviously a lot of people, and they're like, show me your RPA tool. There is an RPA tool in our platform. We're known for being RPA and automation. That is our key anchor, but we're really a platform. And when you think of a platform, you think about the phone that's sitting in your pocket. That's a platform. And you put apps on top of that, which has come into a marketplace. We all know the Apple story and how Steve Jobs revolutionized that. We're really talking the same thing. And from what you're describing, it's turning a platform into an ability to provide a marketplace for these items. You talked about the other 44% that doesn't have the infrastructure or cost, but I think we both agree they still want it, right? They want the RPA, they want the AI. It's not a shiny object. It's still on the hype curve in a really good place, so it hasn't worn out its need. It just increases every year and kind of creates some new tricks. So we see that potential where, an organization like yourself who is spending money at cost to create value in the organization, flipping that paradigm and now turning your cost center into a value center. It's like a business in its own where you have unique IP, and sort of like we saw last year during COVID, when a lot of organizations were building AI models around COVID challenges, and I believe you did that yourself. Going to the market and saying, here's some things that I just want to give you. I know a lot of organizations did that through Epic, but Epic isn't necessarily an AI distribution channel. But when you have an automation solution, it becomes a more robust, adoptable channel to provide those models or to connect into through API. And now you're giving that other 44% access to these models to improve quality of care and optimization without having to bear all this cost of a huge COE. So I definitely see that not necessarily being in the far future, but definitely in the near future, because it's no longer a technical challenge.
Yeah, I think what we see is multiple platform marketplace and multiple platforms. We also like the idea that the fact that different institutions, so whether that's software companies, health systems, various size hospital, can really innovate and think of things to solve, and then put it out in the marketplace. Whether that's many different folks' platforms. Would it make sense depending on what we're looking for, and bring those things for other people to use, and realize the benefits. As I think we see that's the way to go, at least my opinion, and hopefully the market will be going in that direction, that they're creating these things that, there's a good level of competition, a good level of innovation, and good level of reuse. Yep. Where I think the cost will get cheaper and cheaper, and this becomes sort of a mainstream technology that will be applied where it makes sense. And I think and that would be good for everyone, and then also reduce the cost of the models that people right now spend a lot of time and effort doing it, either self-doing it or even when they purchase, the costs are not cheap. Mm-hmm. But the reusability, extensibility, and multiple market platform is the way that we think that the industry ought to go.
Well, as long as we keep focus on the iron triangle, right? Access, quality.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, Mr. Nader, thank you so much for joining me in this session today. I think a few valuable points that kind of came out to the audience is think about it as a platform. Think AI and automation, and really the whole spectrum of intelligent processing in one bucket as a one center of excellence, because your programs will scale faster and better. It's not an easy thing to do. And even if you don't have the ability to bear the cost of building a large, wide program, a lot of organizations are thinking about how to make their programs available to other organizations, so your cost is minimal, but you can get to the endpoint much faster, right? That always, I want to be first, second, kind of fits into the healthcare paradigm. And with this kind of technology, you can be with very minimal risk. So again, I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate the AI4 audience, and look forward to the 2022 year.
Thank you, Jason. My pleasure. A great conversation, and hope the audience would pick up something that we said, whether they agree, disagree, but at least hopefully we informed the audience about these very important topics that's out there.
Agreed. Thank you again, and thank you to the AI4 audience.
Thank you.
That's it for today's general session. I hope you found it eye-opening. We're going to take a short break, and then at 2:30 Eastern Time, the tracks will begin. Like yesterday, we have 5 tracks today: providers and payers, pharma and biotech, medical devices, the technical track, where you'll find nuanced model-level insights, and the innovation stage, where you'll find founders of leading startups. All tracks have world-class speakers, so you can't go wrong. Enjoy and have the best digital conference day of your life.